Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Prosperous Nonprofit. I am really excited to be here today with Christina Edwards, and I'm really excited to dive in and get to know her. Christina, welcome.
I'm so excited to be here. So thanks for having me.
Yes. Well, we initially found each other over through LinkedIn. And when I saw that you had a podcast called Purpose and Profit Club, I was like, okay, purpose plus profit, like we are meant to be friends.
Yes.
So I'm super excited to get to know you more. Tell us a little bit about, let's see, where do we begin? Why don't we start with your business today and what you
Yeah.
do, and then we're going to get into the journey. But let's start with what you're doing today.
Amazing. Yeah, because boy, has that been a long and winding road, right? So today I host the Purpose and Profit Club podcast, as you said, and I have a group coaching program of that same name, so the club. And I work with nonprofit leaders, marketers, and fundraisers. And the reason why I say all three is because smaller shops tend to have and maybe an organization where they wear all of those hats or where there's at least some cross training and some crossover. So I don't necessarily say I only work with, the ED. I only work with the marketer because a lot of times the marketing department is also doing the online fundraising and development.
Mhm.
And so they can all play ball with me. And I work on two different things. I work with them to give them the strategy to get noticed and funded online. So that increase of visibility. And what I noticed after doing this work for so long is that I can give you strategy all day. I can give you templates. I can give you tools. I can give you swipe copy. I can give you done for you everything. And sometimes my folks aren't taking action. And the reason why they're not taking action and using those templates and tools is actually because of how they're thinking and feeling. And so that's really where the inner work and the coaching for that piece. So that's what we do at the club. So it's both.
That's awesome. So I love that second piece, especially
Mhm.
as an entrepreneur. I've invested so much in
Yep.
business coaching for myself. And so I don't see that often in the
Yep.
nonprofit sector. So is your program, is it like in a group format?
It is a group format. So I have several online courses that have been just an amazing signature programs that are self-study courses. So I have an email marketing course, I have an influencer marketing course. They're really amazing. When you join this program, you get all of that. So you can go through the courses. But ultimately, what I found again and again and again is that I would have a percentage of people who would just go through the course, put in the work, follow it, and they're like, I 5x year over year. I 5x this fundraiser. I've had amazing results. And then there's another group that's like, I'm not sure how to go find influencers for my particular niche, or I'm not really sure what to say in this donor meeting, or how do I, and it's like, okay, let's unpack that. And that's the piece that they do there. So they get both. They get all of the templates and tools and things like that, but then we meet each week to kind of go, all right, what are we working on? What's the intention moving forward? And I think now I'm remembering, Stephanie, I think that you and I, or I connected with you, maybe you didn't know, on Instagram. And I feel like we both have a mutual love for Rachel Rogers' work. So I love, am I right?
Ah.
Have you worked
Yes.
with
Yeah,
Rachel?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
cool,
Yeah,
cool,
yeah.
cool. Yes. So I mean, for me, investing in coaching has been, it's been like going for a walk versus going in a jet, right? In business growth. It's
Yes.
like
Yes.
it's like sometimes I talk to my clients about driving without directions. If you're just aimlessly driving, you sort of kind of get to where you want to versus putting it in your GPS, putting it in Waze, getting there faster. Like that is the work that we do together. That's the work that I think a great coach does. I do think that part of what I bring is still consulting because I have so much experience in this world in marketing and online fundraising and just scaling. So we bring in the like, put this there, do this, not that as well.
hmm Oh my gosh. Okay. Oh, so many things. Yes. Okay. Love Rachel Rogers. She's been my business coach for the last 2 years. I was in her mastermind and sadly
Amazing.
she's not doing it anymore, but yeah, like you're so right. Going for a walk versus getting on a jet, like a
Yep.
good coach will get
Yep.
you in the seat on the jet and take off. And
Yeah.
yeah, there's no turning back.
There's like
So
a leap to
love
it.
it.
There's like a leap to, I
hmm
think, whether, and the more I'm like, the more I just really kind of work with organizations and just see my own business growth, the more I'm like, we're the same. Like we're all entrepreneurs. We all have the same
Yeah.
kind of mindset stuff. And it's
Yeah.
like, having a coach to believe in you, having a coach to move you forward, to take that next big step that inevitably, it doesn't always feel like good and cozy and comfortable to take those leaps, but those are the
Mm-hmm.
leaps worth taking, you know? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't see many nonprofit leaders, and I've worked with many, many, many over the years,
Hmm.
invest in coaching. Or maybe like, because number one, they don't know what it is, or they
Yes.
don't have access, they've never been introduced, or it's like resources are tight and like, what is this
Hmm.
coach thing? What are they going to do for me? So this is not like the norm in the nonprofit sector, at least as
Yeah.
far as I've seen.
Yeah. I think that sometimes, well, investing in any sort of what I would call is professional development. I mean, it
Yes.
is
Yeah.
professional development. It is continuing education. It is
Yeah.
the inner work. It's the outer work. And no, it's not normal. I think the most sort of palatable, like, oh, okay, that maybe is let's bring on a consultant. And I think
Yes.
that's kind of where even I felt comfortable for a while was, and I, branded myself that way. I got a lot of clients that way. I did a lot of consulting work. And ultimately, I'm like, y'all, we just had a coaching session together.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, and again, with the online courses, it's like, okay, maybe I can go to bat and buy this course, and I can go to bat to my ED and say, hey, can I get this course or something like that? And again, it's that same piece. And I'm like, but, if I have a coaching call with those people, they are like, help. They're like, I need help. And like, that is really where we'll have one coaching call. I'll pop in my Facebook group and somebody's like, all right, I sent the email and you won't believe what just happened. I'm like, of course it did. Of course you just did 100K because you sent an email that's been at the bottom of your to-do list because it felt really scary to send. You weren't quite sure what to say. You were worried on the other side about like, what if they answer? What if they don't answer? All of the pieces of rejection, right? And so part of it is new. And part of it is just saying like, okay, if we really want to be an organization that is out there and doing different things like the Charity Waters of the world. Like how many times have organizations been like, why can't we? And it's like, did you
Yeah.
notice how much Charity Water invested in social, especially Twitter? Um, I had their second hire, who now is the co-founder of the Adventure Project, on the podcast to share that. And she's like, they were so willing to be scrappy. They were so willing to throw out the old playbook and be like, here's what we're building. A news story
Mm-hmm.
charity is another one. It's like 3D houses.
Mm-hmm.
What? And it's like, yeah, they're
Mm-hmm.
so willing to throw out the old way of doing it and go, let's try this. Let's go all in and try it this way and see if we can create a community online. And like, yeah, it works. And yeah, they're
Mm-hmm.
paving a way. There's not necessarily a playbook for it, but it's that sort of, relentless optimism that like, I think I've got something here. So those are
Mm-hmm.
the type of people that light me up, that are attracted to my work, and the type of people who are like, we're going to send 2 direct mail pieces a year and we're going to send 4 quarterly emails. I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing, Rachel Rogers, I think she recorded a podcast on this a long time ago, but it's like,
Yeah.
have you really tried everything? Have you
Mm.
really, really tried everything? And
I
if you ask and answer that
love
question
that.
honestly, the answer's probably no. You haven't tried everything.
So whenever I'm like teaching a live webinar for Amplify Social Impact, which is that influencer marketing program where it's like, how do we get digital ambassadors, which I call social street teamers, to really be part of our community, advocate, and ultimately become amazing online fundraisers. So my favorite is when somebody in the chat is like, tried it. And I'm like, let's break that down. How did you try
Yeah.
it? You reached out to
Yeah.
3 people who had no alignment with your cause, who were maybe celebrities, and they never responded. You did not try it, my friend.
Right.
You did not try it. Like that is not trying
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a power of a coach to help hold you
Yes,
accountable
that's
to
right. To
things
hold you
like
to that
that.
piece of like, and show you, okay, because I do get where it's like, okay, but what do you want me to do, Christina? I do get that it feels like, well, what am I supposed to do instead? And so having somebody, and that's really the next part of the process. Okay, well, let's try this. Let's stick to it. Let's evaluate and let's get you some easy wins, because there are easy wins to get. I think we make things so binary sometimes of like, well, I reached out to 3 people, it didn't work, by. And now I have to,
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. Oh gosh, I still find myself doing that in my business sometimes. And then I take a step back and I'm like, wait a
That's
second.
that's
I
the
really
piece, is
didn't
I'm
do
like,
very
we're the
much.
same as like
Yes.
much of what my clients are going through. I'm like, you guys, I beta test this stuff myself first before I beta test it with you guys. I'm like, I'm telling you to send more emails. Do you know how many emails I sent last year? I ran my report. I sent 260 some odd emails. in a year. Not to
Mm-hmm.
let, I'm talking as a mass email to my list, over 200 emails. I'm like, so
Mm-hmm.
don't say, I don't know what it feels like to be like, shit, is this another, is this too many emails? I know that discomfort. And I also
Yeah.
know the results of that, of like, this works. This works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Talk to me about consultants versus coaches because I feel like in a nonprofit budget, which,
Uh-huh.
as a finance person, I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing the budget line items, it
Mm-hmm.
feels a lot easier to put money in a consultant line item and
Yep.
versus like a coach. What is a coach? So talk to me
Yeah.
about the difference between the two and then sort of how you have come to like marry those two things in your
Yeah.
work.
So a couple things come to mind. One is sometimes I'm in the marketing budget, right? Sometimes I could be in that. Sometimes I'm in, and this is my favorite place to be, is in the professional development budget. Like when I see an organization that's like,
Mm.
you get $3,000 a year, I mean, whatever. I'm like, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm seeing more of those, and it's like I always think the lag time between the for-profit and the nonprofit, that lag time of like, it's become standard. I remember having a conversation with my husband, I think a year or two ago, and he was like, "Hey, I've got like $2,000 of professional development. I got to spend it." Almost like your what is it, HSA? And he was like, "What
Yeah.
do I do?" And so I was like, it was so fun. I was like, "Okay, you could hire a coach. Okay, let's look at conferences." And for him to just dream a little of like, actually, what do I want?
Hmm.
And we're not doing that in the nonprofit world very often. So I get very excited when people actually have a professional development budget. Yes, we do see a consultant budget or something like that sometimes as well. For me, I think of it this way. A consultant is typically a subject matter expert on what they do. And a coach tends to be in the, like, if you zoom out, almost like a life coach or a business coach or something like that, a little bit more of just a more agnostic, and they can help you get to where you want to be. Like, could I coach somebody, and have I coached people before on, building their online business that is a for-profit? But yeah, I can coach on that because I know how to do it. So it can be a little bit of both. I like to see the mix of, this is not done for you. You're not throwing work over to the wall, but I am helping you get to that finish line. People, for example, I'm working with somebody right now who's like, I want to start a monthly, or maybe they started a monthly giving program, but there's like one person in it, right? But I really want recurring giving. There's a couple of people who have said that to me. So it's like, I'm going to show you the process, but you're going to come to me each week. And then really what comes up is like, how do we get, they want 50 donors. How do I get 50 donors? What is our strategy for that? And what's in the way, both in how you're thinking and how you're feeling? And how do I get you on board so you're like feeling fired up about it and not like that dread piece? So it's that mindset piece is really a huge part of coaching, and a big part of what I think people miss as
Hmm.
being pivotal to their revenue level. Like pivotal. When you feel dread, I know the feeling of dread because I feel it every single year around tax time, and it cracks me up because I track my hours just as an internal process to show me my own BS in my brain. So I try every year around tax time. I'm like, oh my god, my taxes. Now I have QuickBooks. I have a lovely CPA. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
But the amount of dread of just having to like think about it, I track it. So my taxes take me like a couple hours to do of actual work, but the amount of time that I think about doing the actual work is, it's 5x the hours. And so I'm
Hmm.
making the entire process terrible. It's like a terrible experience versus saying to myself, I got 4 hours, I can knock this out. And that
Yeah.
empowerment and that self-pride and that like building that muscle of just being like, no, I can do this. So like donor cultivation, we feel that same thing, right? Marketing,
Hmm.
videos, all of that, like anything that requires like getting people into action mode where there's some resistance. It's like, that's the power of a coach that a consultant wouldn't necessarily do. A consultant's going to kind of peek
Hmm.
behind the hood, give you a strategy, give you some templates, and go.
Exactly. Oh, that's so valuable. Okay, let's back up a second and
Mhm.
tell me about like what has the journey looked like to get you to this
Yeah.
point where you're doing this work of sort of like, quasi coaching, quasi consulting, online
Yeah.
courses. How did we get here?
So obviously I got an art degree.
Obviously, right? Okay.
So yeah, I got an art degree, and it wasn't until my senior year of college that I got a business minor, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like, you know what I mean? But So I say that only to say I'm always fascinated by people who are like, I went to school for communications and now I work or you know what I mean? I'm like, you did? Did you
Yeah.
go to school? Is your degree in what you do?
No, not at all.
Okay,
No,
perfect.
not
I
at
love
all.
it. Okay, great. So went to school for that, had worked my way through school. I had a bunch of different jobs. I learned sales really, really well. That's something that if I believe in a product, it's very easy for me to sell. I started my first business in 2007. I started selling real estate. I was really good at that because I was just like scrappy. I was just willing. I started from zero. And I built a list. I built a client list from zero. And I understood that like I cold called. So that's the same thing of like, I know what it
Hmm.
feels like to cold call people and have people be annoyed. And guess what? I also like closed deals from cold calls. I'm like, so I've been there. Like I know the sweat that you get through that process.
Hmm.
So I did that. I ultimately started a marketing agency in 2011, something like that. And that's really when I honed this process, this skill set. We worked with a ton of companies, so a lot of for-profits, some nonprofits along the way. I did social media, marketing, PR, events. I once did a wedding. I was like, take weddings off the website. I never want to do events. I'm not an event girl. So I really learned what I was good at, and I really could see there were so many times where I was like, ooh, why aren't my nonprofit clients doing this? Ooh, here's something that they could do. And they're just stuck in like that, what I call a rear view mirror thinking. Ultimately, I closed that business, launched my consultancy, and from there have been scaling up. 2020 was definitely an invitation for me to scale up in a way I was used to teaching large groups, but they were large groups in Atlanta. And it was like, ooh.
Mm.
So I really scaled up and now work with organizations all over the world, which is so fun. So that's kind of been my process. I think the last time I was an employee was like in college, maybe. I don't know.
Wow.
So I come from a line of entrepreneurs. So that was modeled to me. It was just part of, it was very, very normal, growing
Hmm.
up. So I think that there was that piece. And I also think that, I've always been very fast and I can see the forest through the trees. And I'm like, put that there, put this there. And I now think that I'm too much of a wild horse to like wait and go through the slowness sometimes of a large company. And I love being the outsider looking in, going, this is how you can make 100K in 30 days. Let's go. Boom, 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 boom.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I left out the part where I worked at a rock club for years and years and years. It was so fun. And I will tell you, that is how I came up with my influencer marketing method, is working there.
Mm.
We would see low ticket sales, and we would call what was then guerrilla marketing a grassroots street team. And that is what I've adapted and teach and amplify social impact. So it's like I took all these pieces which sound like they have nothing to do with anything, but they have, you know, everything to do with making money and getting visible.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that. So I love that when you said like sort of entrepreneurship is in your family. And so
Yeah.
that like risk to work for
Yeah.
yourself, did that ever feel like a risk to you? Or it was like, no, this is just what we do?
I think that and I need to have my dad on the podcast and just be like, because one of the questions I want to ask him is like, do you realize how comfortable you are with risk? Because
Mm.
he had one business that did very, very well, but he also had some side businesses that didn't. He invested in a
Hmm.
restaurant that closed. He did that. And I think that him being very transparent with me through my childhood was very helpful, because his business, he was an antique dealer. So it was like, it also had a
Mm.
scrappiness to it. Like it was just like, it was very like informal. And so I
Hmm.
knew his best clients. I knew everybody that worked at the shop, like everything. And so it really helps me understand. I knew when he had a good auction. I knew when he had a bad auction. He was very transparent with me. He told me one day how much it cost to run the business per day, like his nut for the day.
Mm.
And hearing
Hmm.
that was so eye-opening, because there was way more zeros than I thought. And uh and just operating the business to keep the lights on, right? To break even. And so I think that hearing that was really, really helpful. But I think he's somebody that also was, and also too, like was very nimble and very much figured it out. And that was modeled to me and my grandfather, my mother, like all over. So I think that helped. I don't know if that answered your
Mm.
question, but
Yeah, well, it totally did because I feel like my journey as a young adult was like very much the opposite. It was like you go to college, you get the
yes,
job that has the 401k, you sit your
yes,
butt in an office chair from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and
yeah,
that's what you do. Like that's what you
yeah.
do. And so when I started my business coming up on almost 10 years ago, I was out of college like for a long time at that point. So I like knew what I was doing. I didn't feel like it was a risk at all, but I would imagine that if I had done that, a decade prior when I got out of school, it
Mhm.
would have been like, oh, what are you doing? So
Yeah.
do you see, I don't know if you're able to generalize, but the nonprofit leaders and the social impact entrepreneurs that you're working with that are coming through
Mhm.
your programs, are you finding that they do have some tolerance for risk and the things that they're doing? Or is it like, are we sort of following this nonprofit path that's been like laid for us and we're just doing what we've always done?
That's interesting. I think there's a couple of different things. I'm thinking of the person who comes to my program who's like maybe a little bit woo. Like he or she has done a bit of self-development work. Like, maybe they're just into a little bit of that. Like maybe they're listening to Glennon Doyle's podcast or something like that, right? So, and they're just like they're starting to make the connections with how their nervous system feels fundraising, how they feel marketing, how they feel leading. And so maybe that's how they're attracted to me. Then maybe there's another person who I'm almost thinking of the person who's like on the edge of burnout, throwing their hands in the air, going, what gives? What gives?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm so tired and this isn't working. And we've tried this. And I don't know. I don't know how long I want to be doing like almost like that
Mm-hmm.
frustration. Like I get that frustration.
Mm-hmm.
Who's like interested. They're like, okay, what Christina's saying is intriguing. She's saying that one of the things I often say is you don't need more donors. They're already in your world. They're already sitting on your list. Like there are hundreds of thousands of dollars you have not tapped into on your list. So I think they're like, okay, that's an interesting theory. And I feel burnt out. Show me. And so there's this like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes too it's almost like in a low you're willing and you're open to something new and different, so I think there's that person as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe there's a third person. I'm thinking of an ed that I've worked with for a really long time, and he and I are very similar, and he has an entrepreneurial quality to him. So he's always, I'm like, I got an idea. He's like, go, run, go with it. Let's go. Let's do it. So he has
Mm-hmm.
that hit the gas mentality. He also has a great relationship with his board where he is not going to his board for every minute,
Mm-hmm.
tiny thing. And I definitely require that. I definitely require people who have a like a willingness to lead and not go to their board for every tiny decision or every tiny expenditure.
Yeah. Do you think that nonprofit leaders, or the ones that you're seeing most successful, do they need to have that sort of entrepreneurial spirit in some way, shape, or form? Is that kind of an essential quality to have?
I think it helps, but I also want to honor that it can be cultivated. So if it's not naturally in you,
Mm,
totally fine. Like it's
yeah.
fine. We can like build that muscle for sure. I think that many people are tired of the long cultivation cycle for donors. I know I am. And the long, oh, we have to do this, we have to do this. And it's like, what if there's just a faster way to do it? I'm somebody who I don't want you to make like I don't want to go have a coffee meeting and then you call me and then you like, what do you need? What do you need? You know what I mean? Like I want to help.
Yes.
I'm very like I think my Facebook profile from back when I made it, and it probably still says it, is bottom line me. Like bottom line me. Like I want to skim.
Yes.
I don't want to. And so it's like, what if you start thinking about all the people in your world who like actually want to help, but fast track it there. So we can build up that like entrepreneurial, creative, daring, courageous muscle. It's buildable. And if you're an entrepreneur, it will have already kind of been built because you've already been putting yourself out there before. And so, yeah,
Yeah. I love that. Like, who really wants to have that coffee meeting anyway? Like, probably half the people don't want to have it, but it's like
you know what
what you do.
that's right. I'm thinking about, and I know this innately because I had the agency. And what would happen is I would have ad reps. So like, media publications be like, hey, Christina, can I take you to coffee? I'm like, I don't want to go to like tell me the
Right.
deal or like, hey, our ad rates have changed or like what it's just like go ahead and tell me, like, how do we get this faster? And it's not for lack of caring or anything like that. It's just like, I know what you need, so let's just get to that. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, yeah. And it's like, you get where they're coming. Okay, they're trying to build a relationship. Great. But like,
sure,
are there other ways that we can do this
that's
in a
right.
way that feels much better to everyone? So
Yes.
yeah,
That's
I love that.
scalable. Coffee meetings are not
Yeah.
scalable. Yeah.
No, 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 not at all. I mean, yeah, it's, 40 minutes for coffee plus the 15 minutes there and
Yep.
the 15 minutes back and the, then 20 minutes on either side to get back into your work again.
Yep.
Like, no, that's a lot of time.
Yep.
Well, one thing that, that I know you're into is like, the breaking all of the nonprofit rules.
Yeah.
And I say nonprofit rules in air quotes because like we're talking about, there's just ways that like people have always done things and
Yeah.
you seem like you're a rule breaker. So talk to me about
Yeah.
some of, maybe a couple of the quote unquote rules
Yeah.
that you're like, yeah, these shouldn't be rules anymore. And here's how we're breaking them.
Okay. A couple ones. I want to talk about overhead, but first I will talk about social media.
Okay.
One of the things that nonprofits were like slow going and now we're here is like they're on social media, they're doing the things, they're posting, they're creating the content, they're doing the reels and all the things. And I actually want you to like turn your entire social media strategy on its head. And I really don't want nonprofits to spend a lot of time doing any of that. Instead, I want their social media strategy. So I want 80% of their social media strategy to be relationship building with their street team so that they are doing that on their behalf, right? So you're
Mhm.
getting outside of, it's like me sitting in my office in my house talking about my work, right? No, what if I actually go out and talk to my community and have my community members and my friends and I go, collaborate with them. So I want them to stop spending so much time creating their own content on their own networks and start creating relationships to kind of diffuse that out. So that's one piece. The other
Mhm.
piece is the email piece. So those are the marketing ones is I want nonprofits to send weekly emails, period, full stop. And I don't want them to be boring. And I don't want them to be those like long content blocks that read like an old newspaper. I want them to actually give me a peek behind the curtain. I want to know
Mhm.
the people writing it. I want them to make calls to action unapologetically. Do not stick that donate button at the bottom footer of the page and be like, see, I asked Christina, no one donated. I want you to actually send an email often that is soliciting donations and do it in a way that's really compelling and still tells a great story, but is unapologetic in asking for funding or asking for any sort of social action. So it could be, sign up, volunteer, join, something like that. The
Mhm.
overhead piece, I think, is the piece that gets a lot of nonprofits stuck in the hamster wheel of revenue plateaus and stuck in the rearview mirror thinking because they literally are like can't get out of it because they're just stuck on their own like this is what we spend on this and so therefore we can't spend more on professional development or anything like that or hiring support. One of the pieces is I never ever want I never want organizations to tout their low overhead. Oh my gosh, our
Yes.
right, good news, our overhead is the tiniest piece of the pie on our annual report. It's 3%. I'm like, do you know what you're also saying? Great news, Christina. We pay our staff at poverty level. They're
Right.
barely making ends meet. And you know what? The people who are in junior positions are more newer account coordinators and so on, development coordinators. The churn we're seeing in this position is amazing. It's so many people are paid so little, they're overworked that they keep leaving and we keep hiring new people, which costs us more money. But look how little we're spending. I'm like, that is what you're saying. That is what you're
Yep.
saying. And
Mhm.
I also don't want it to be, like a seesaw where you're like, okay, well, our ED gets paid really well. And then everybody else is like a volunteer, an intern, or, making $30,000 a year. So I want us to just like even set and go, okay, if all of these for profits are making, I mean, it cracks me up what you can make starting an Amazon business selling succulents. This is a true story of somebody I know who's doing over $1 million a year.
Oh my
Like
gosh.
just taught
Yeah.
herself. And she's
Yeah.
not a unicorn, right? There's so many ways you can make money
True.
online, but you have to be willing to go, okay, let me put myself out there. Let me figure this out. Let me invest. And it's like, I just want us to realize that nonprofits can re-educate, recalibrate the way that funding comes in, prioritize online, invest in the tech to prioritize online. Again, I had another person come to me and say, our donor was really mad about the fee to make an online donation. So if you've ever used any, I mean, there's so many where they say, would you like to cover the cost of the donation? So donor tries to make $1,000 donation and there's processing fees and there's like a checkbox. And that donor was like, that is too much, right? That's too much. And I was like, well, they can uncheck the box. And they were like, but on a principle, we're mad that that's how much your donation tool costs, right? So on a principle, they were mad about that. And I was like, do you know how much opportunity you missed on letting them know that that donation tool has a higher conversion rate and literally brings in more funding for your programs and services, and also saves you the back end admin time, which I have seen it is a killer for them to piecemeal these thank you notes or piecemeal because nothing's automated with the cheap one. I'm like, don't be a race to the bottom. Like, don't race to the bottom to have the cheapest tool, to pay your employees the cheapest, to tout that everybody's a volunteer and underpay. Like, what are we doing? So investing in people and realizing that you can spend money and actually grow your organization and grow your impact. Like, that is my thesis. It works, but it does require you to have some uncomfortable conversations, because there are going to be times, I would imagine, like that one ED dealt with, where somebody's going to say, hey, I was told your overhead's supposed to be this percentage. And then you're like, let me educate you for a second. We've had 14 development coordinators come in and out the door in 5 years. Right? You're like, here's the cost that actually costs. Like, how do you feel about that? Or, so-and-so is barely making ends meet and can't afford childcare on herself. Like this stuff matters. And it's like, is your mission perpetuating what it is trying to like actually end? Right. So if you work in any sort of poverty, if you work in any sort of anything, food access, it's like, how are we helping or hurting in this overhead thing? So I could talk about that all day.
Oh my gosh. Well, me too, obviously in the finance space. And people always
Yes.
ask me, what should my overhead be? What should our admin expenses be? I'm like, I'm not here to tell you what it should be. But like you, I'm like, the goal is not to get it as low as possible.
Oh,
And I have worked for organizations where that is the case. And, I couldn't buy a new laptop. And like every time I would lift my laptop up, the
yep.
battery, this is like a long time ago, but the battery would drop out of the bottom of the laptop. So I had to
Yes.
duct tape together. And I'm like, is this real life right now? Like, we can't, but our overhead is 4%. So go
That's
us.
right.
But
Go us. Right. It
I don't
takes me,
have a laptop.
an hour and a half to process one donation, but our donation tool is free, Christina. It's free. I'm like,
Right.
great.
Right. Yeah. And well, I think I think it's interesting is like, in a way, there's many nonprofits that, like you said, are perpetuating the conversation, because we're still saying our overhead is so low and we're still focusing
That's
on these
right.
outdated metrics that should not be a measure of success whatsoever. So we're
Right.
continuing to perpetuate it by
That's right.
having these conversations. But an opportunity would be, hey, how about we use those weekly emails that we're sending, because Christina told us
Yes.
to talk
Yes.
about some other things and to change the conversation and to shift. And, maybe we're talking about like, hey, this is what, look at our staff that we're paying for and the amazing work that they can do. Or I don't know. I'm not a marketing
But
person,
it's like
but
we're innovating. Like, how do we innovate? How do we bring in talent? How do we bring in people who are great storytellers, who are great with CRMs, who are
yes.
great at scaling up? Well, they don't want to make $30,000 a year when they can make quadruple that in the
Mm-hmm.
for-profit industry. And I guess my
Mm-hmm.
going back to the second thing is like my idea, my thesis here is that you can pay people well, you can pay them a
Mm-hmm.
better salary, and it will make your organization more money. But it
Yeah.
does require that leap. It does
Mm-hmm.
require like the leap. And then what it requires is educating. There's going to be a part of your board that's like, can we do this? And then the
Mm-hmm.
one or two or three PO donors who are used to stereotypical imagery, stereotypical language, and perpetuating this myth of overhead, and just being like, okay, well, Mr. or Mrs. Donor, here, let me like take you to school for just a second. And having your pitch ready to educate them. And I would bet they care about your cause. And ultimately, if they're donating, let's say they're donating $50,000 a year and they're like, your overhead is crazy, we're concerned. Educating them that $50 to help support your operations, how that actually helps scale your operations. Like you and them want the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want just the person who's going to be like, I'm dipping into this job because that's the only job that I could get, and I'll be out of here as soon as I can get a job that'll pay me more. I don't want that
Mm-hmm.
person. I want to retain
No.
talent. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I going back to the first thing you said on social media,
Yeah.
I was listening to one of your podcast episodes. It was an interview with somebody about community, and
Mm-hmm.
I feel like was it recent? I don't know. Anyway, it was.
Was
I think it
it
was kind
was
of a
it Carrie
recent
Melissa
one.
Jones? Was it okay? Was
Yes,
it
that sounds
community
right.
building? She's great. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah. Well, and I just thought like what you guys were talking about was so interesting around instead of, nonprofits on social media just sitting here talking about ourselves, like here's what we're doing. Let's have a whole bunch of other people like these
Yes.
influencers like you're talking about be talking about us because you were saying on the show, it's like when you want to get a referral for
Yep.
a doctor, like, are you going to your health insurance website
Yes.
and getting the list of like all the doctors in your network? No, you're asking your like mom friends who also need,
Yes.
who have a good pediatrician.
That's right.
Um,
Literally, that's how we
yeah.
got our pediatrician, our dentist,
Yes. Same.
yeah, like all of the doctors. I
Same.
could go to Google and say, what charity should I donate to? But I'm not. I'm going to go, oh, my friend Muriel shared this fundraiser. I trust her. I know, like, and trust her. I had no idea that this organization exists. This is cool. I'm in. And
Yeah.
if you don't add friction and I can make that donation from my couch, you got me. Now, if you add friction and it's this long form and I got to get my wallet, maybe you lost me.
I'm
So it's
out.
like those are the
Yeah.
pieces, right? Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's huge. And that does feel like in some ways it feels organic and in other ways it feels like it actually is scalable. Would you say that approach it like sort of, pounding the pavement, very organic, or is it scalable?
The idea of influencers and street teamers and all that, it's the
Yeah,
most
yeah.
scalable strategy ever. So the way that I teach it, the way that my clients have done it, I'm like, start your beta street team. Start with 3 people.
Hmm.
Start with 5 people.
Mm.
And it is insane what you can do with 5 people. Like I'm talking 5x year over year fundraisers, like with 5 people.
Wow.
And then drop in more. So I have another client who right out of the gate, she got a YouTuber with 1 million followers. Like, but this wasn't a random YouTuber. There was a distinct
Yeah.
alignment, right? And the
Hmm.
other piece is just like donor churn, we don't want ambassador and street teamer churn. So we want to keep those people so it compounds year over year. So imagine your beta street team starts out with 5 people, and next year there's 50 on it. And next year after
Hmm.
that, there's 100 people. And to the point with the community building piece, and they feel seen. They actually feel like they're making a difference. Like, what a
Hmm.
beautiful way to scale up. I'm imagining like that, just scaling up the revenue just coming from that. It's like the thing that everybody's chasing with the monthly giving program. Have that, but also have this street team rocking and rolling and building year over year. And you're going to see a lot more zeros. And it's very
Hmm.
easy. It's a very easy concept. It's not something that you run year round. I teach it where you're running campaigns a couple times a year. So your street team does not feel like board work. They're just dipping in and
Hmm.
out to help you when you need help. They're like, put me in, coach.
Mm.
Yeah,
Hmm. So you have a street team and they're tapping in at certain campaign
that's
periods
right.
throughout the year.
That's right.
Gotcha.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. That's yeah, that's awesome. And do you have a course on this?
Yeah, that's Amplify Social Impact and the Purpose and Profit Club. That's what we do in there. So they get access to the course and then they go, this is what happens every time. They're like, okay, but I work in food insecurity in this tiny town. Where do I get my street teamers? I'm like, come on, I got you.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And when we're talking about relationship building, I mean, that's an avenue that you can go instead of like, okay, let me have coffee with a bunch of, rich people in my town. Maybe this is this is a strategy that we probably haven't tried yet,
Mm-hmm.
that needs to be tapped. And I would imagine that this doesn't really cost very much, if anything, for nonprofits.
$0. I'm glad you said
Okay.
that. So we are
Yeah.
not paying influencers to post
Hmm.
like an ad. So like
Right.
about, this mascara. we are collaborating, we are partnering with them, and we're asking them to be a part of your community. And so it is not a taking, it is a mutual, like there is a reciprocity to it. So you need to find people who have a tie to your cause or an interest in your cause. Many creators want to give back, especially our Gen Z. Like
Yes.
they're
Yes.
our young philanthropists. So they may
Mhm.
have hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram or YouTube or wherever, and they're, you know, posting videos. I'm thinking about the one my son watches, and it's just like, they're doing all these crazy
Mr. Beast.
obstacle course. He loves Mr.
Oh,
Beast too. Yes,
yeah,
yeah. But it's like they also, but I'm pretty sure Mr. Beast actually has some charitable component too. But they
I
actually
think
want to
so.
use their platforms for good. Many, many, many of
Hmm.
them are like, and my favorite thing. So my now sister-in-law, so my cousin's new wife, has hundreds of thousands of followers. And I'm like, Sam, does anyone ever pitch you from nonprofits? And she's like, one time. They never get
Wow.
pitched. And she's like,
Wow.
she cares. So she has the biggest heart. She cares all, like, give her a cause. She cares. And then the one
Yeah.
time that she got pitched, she was like, yes, she was a heck yes. She helped them with a fundraiser they were on. And I was like, what'd they do after? She's like, nothing. They said, thank you. I was like, no. They did the one and done, they didn't retain
Yeah.
her. So, there's a nuance to it, to scaling it up. But once you get it, it's such an untapped revenue source.
Yeah. That is brilliant. I feel like I saw, I think a while ago, was it Pencils of Promise that had like Justin Bieber or somebody like a big celebrity back in the
Probably.
day, or and people
Yeah.
would like give their birthdays. I feel like there was
Yeah.
a big pop in that. And then I feel like I don't see that. Like you're saying,
So
this person has hundreds of thousands of followers and nobody's asking
yes.
her to
Here's the
collaborate.
best part is the nuance is we don't need Justin, we don't need Drake, we don't need Beyonce. They'd be cool, but actually you'll see a higher
Mm.
ROI with a more micro or a more targeted influencer anyway, that like you and
Hmm.
I aren't not a Mr. Beast, that we're not as in a household name. That's where you're
Hmm.
really going to see people go, like, for example, an interior designer I follow, like something niche enough, but she's got
Hmm.
hundreds of thousands or millions of followers, right? It can be
Hmm.
like that piece. Yeah.
Hmm. That's brilliant. I hope that all of our listeners are like, I hope the wheels are turning here
Yes, we
because,
should link. So I have a masterclass on that. If you're like, all right, tell me more. What is it? Let me tell you. It's
yes.
splendidcourses.com/free training. That will tell you about that piece. If you want to
Okay.
see some ideas in action.
Yeah, I think this is incredible because it doesn't cost anything. It can amplify your impact without
Yes.
like doing Facebook ads. And it's
Yes.
actually taking the social media stuff that you're probably already paying for and doing and
Yeah.
probably not getting a return on and actually going to do
That's right.
something.
Because
Yeah.
what are we doing? We're like literally, we're like ditching the algorithm. We're like going out the back
Yes.
door where the algorithm's like, all right, well, we're going to serve your post to like 4 people today. And it's like, not with our street
Yeah.
team. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. So good. Okay. I feel like I have a million more questions, but okay, more emails.
Yeah.
I was writing down, you're like, okay, the three things when we're talking about breaking all the nonprofit rules, more emails.
Yes.
How many emails are nonprofits sending right now, do you think? Like the ones that you work with, how many emails are they
I would say the
sending?
ones that come to my world, I would say between once a month and once a quarter or once every other month. That's something like that. Or completely, and it's like no judgment. Or they're like when I can, and sometimes it's like 4 times a year or 6 times a year. Or
Whoa.
it's like not a lot, and then I send 5 in December. So I would say I see that mix. Yeah,
That is so interesting because as entrepreneurs
we
and
know.
as someone who follows all the online
Yep.
marketing
Yep.
gurus, all the people, they're like more emails, more emails. And so I'm like, okay, we're not even sending, I mean, we're sending like 1 to 2 emails a week. And that feels
Perfect.
like doable for
Perfect.
us.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, there are some marketers out there that'd be like, you need to be sending like 3 or 4 emails a week.
I mean, the truth
Um,
is, every time you send an email, you can make money. It's an opportunity to make money. Like it is. And I
mhm.
think what we think is every time I send an email is an opportunity for somebody to get pissed off and unsubscribe. That is our
Uh-huh.
primary thought.
Mhm.
And no wonder that informs people sending. Or the other thought I think nonprofits think is emails are for program updates. And so I'll just send
Mm.
a program update once a quarter, once a month. And that's the purpose of email. I'm like, no, 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 no. Email saves you from driving cross town for that meeting. Like the email, the way I teach email literally has turned into people getting major donors asking them for a meeting. Hey, can we talk? I'm like,
Mm.
that's what you want. You want a reply rate, a response rate where people are like, I had no idea. When are you free? That's what an email
Hmm.
can do. An email can raise you hundreds of thousands of dollars, but you do have to send it and you can't make it boring. Like those are the two
Yeah.
things. So you can't do the thing again where you're like, Christina, I'm totally sending weekly and nothing's happening. I'm like, okay, well, let me look at it. Like, did I fall asleep? Was it so long? Did you bury the ask? Are there just content blocks? Is it not accessible? Is it hard for me to figure out what you're trying to say? Like those types of pieces. Like I actually want
Hmm.
people want the real. The emails that I read and I'm excited to read are where somebody's telling me like a funny story or somebody's telling me
Yeah.
a vulnerable moment. Like, we
Hmm.
literally vacuumed my son's first tooth. Like it's gone. The tooth fairy did not come, totally messed up. That's an email. And you're like, what does that
Hmm.
have to do with anything? But there's a handshake that can happen between a story and your
Yeah.
call to action where yeah, you're nodding because you're like, yeah, you know this. And it's like,
Yeah.
there's so much opportunity for the nonprofit world to like have some fun with it. And my EDs and I have some marketers too who are doing this now. And it's so fun to be like, yeah, no more boring emails.
Hmm. Yeah. What are some of the best calls to action that you either recommend or see
Mhm.
organizations using? Obviously, donate, but
Yeah.
are there others that are
I mean,
that have good conversion?
I think a couple things. The more specific, the better. So if you can like say it more brandedly, right? Like
Mm.
then
Yeah.
donate, give, join our community. Like what's the name of your community? Why should they
Mm.
join?
Hmm.
Today, now, those types of things can be helpful for urgency. But the biggest one that I would see is what I would call above the fold. So before I actually start scrolling, give me a link. Okay. Like,
Mm.
so don't put it just
Yeah.
at the bottom or in the last, 50% of the email content. So if you can put it
Hmm.
up higher and then put it later too. So you want both, which again is bringing up
Hmm.
people's discomfort and why coaching exists. They're like, that's a lot of links, Christina. I'm like, it is a lot of links. Let's just, it's okay to feel a little uncomfortable at first. The amount of students that have come to me that said some flavor of like, I felt uncomfortable or I wasn't sure at first. Like I just had Wendy Faust Live Like Lou. I mean, she's just killed it with her email list. And she's like, we weren't sure about they 3x their frequency and their open rate went up. Like it never occurs to us. We always just
Yeah.
think like, oh, everyone's gonna be, and she's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And get her
Yeah.
engagement. People now are more, it's more top of mind. ALS is more top of mind because she's sending more instead of like,
Yeah.
once a quarter or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Yeah, I like that advice to have the button, above the
Pop a
fold
fold. Yeah.
because a lot of times it's like, oh, actually, I've been meaning to donate to them. I don't even need to read this email. Let me just hit the button and, go
Yes.
donate and move on with my day. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
So good. Oh my gosh. Okay. I feel like we could keep going, but I think we need to wrap it up. So the one question I ask all of our guests is, what does a prosperous nonprofit look like to you?
Well, I think we've definitely talked about it today. It is one that the staff is paid well. And the
Hmm.
staff is not only paid well, but I like the idea of well rested or something is coming up to me. So it's like work hard, play hard. Like they are so dedicated. They're in this field for a reason, just like you and I are. Like they're so passionate about the work they're doing and they have a personal life and they
Yeah.
don't feel like what's the word uncomfortable asking for time off or vacations. Like there's this camaraderie and this understanding to the work that they do, and they have a professional development budget and they are just able to see their tangible impact because the people who choose this have such passionate heart-driven purpose behind what they do. And a prosperous nonprofit is one where not only are the clients receiving services treated well, but the staff is treated well. The volunteers are
Hmm.
treated well. The community members are treated well. The email subscribers, the social media
Hmm.
followers. Whereas instead of it talking at them. We have to get your money. We have to get, it's this reciprocal, loving relationship. And if you think about any membership you're in, like it could be a community membership, a gym membership, anything like that, the ones that you've kept, I'm thinking about my Tuesday night ceramics class, like those types, those are all communities where you're like, this is a two-way. I give them money, they give me everything. It's the best, right? And that's a prosperous nonprofit.
I love that. Oh, all of that was so good. I could keep going. I'm not
Yes,
good.
we could. We could.
Okay, tell us all the ways to find you, and we'll obviously put the links in the show notes,
Yeah.
but tell us again the free training that you have to start.
So if
And
you're
then you can give us
interested
all
in
the
the
other links.
influencer piece, go to splendidcourses.com/free training. Go to splendidcourses.com/email if you want to learn about email marketing. That's there. And come hang out with me on the Purpose and Profit Club podcast. That's where you'll get lots more of this, and you can come learn more about my work. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for chatting with me, Christina. I really appreciate it. And this was such a good conversation. I have so many ideas
Yes.
now.
Thank you so much. You asked great questions. So this has been so great.
Yes. All right. We'll talk to you soon.